Hi everyone, and welcome to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're working on our block of the month for the month of October. And as you know, that holiday we have at the end of October, Halloween, is very popular. So we're going to use some of the symbols of the season and get started on our block of the month. And this should be fairly quick and easy once you get familiar with this process. We've done it a couple of times before. We're going to do it one more time. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Well, welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today we're working on our October block of the month. And our block for this month is going to be a big pumpkin and a bat. And they're nice because they really stand out when we combine the colors of the orange and the fall colors for the pumpkin with that dark, sharp black color for the bat. So let me get started by telling you something you'll need to go and get unless you already have it. I am using a free pattern from the Seasoned Homemaker, and I'll put a link down below. And she offered this pattern last year. I was able to pull it just a few weeks ago, so you should be able to get it as well. And we've used our process where we sew right through the piece that's the pattern onto the fabric. And what I've done is I have a piece of black fabric and a piece of white fabric. If you're using something other than solids, make sure those are right sides together. And then I lay the pattern right on top, just like this. And I use my machine at a very small stitch, usually something about 1.8 for my machine. And I stitch right on or very close to the edge of the design. And that's what I've done here. And let's make sure you get a good view of that. And this is where it's stitched right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the pattern from that. And this bat, just so you know, it's on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. The bat itself, the wingspan, is about 9 inches, and its height is probably about 2.5. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the pattern. And because we've made the stitches really small, we can just pull that pattern off. I like to keep my fingers close by the stitch line just to give it a little support. And this pattern is a little more detailed than some of the others we've used this technique with, so we will have to pay special attention to get all of the pieces off, especially since we're dealing with a black fabric. Okay, we've got that torn away. And I'm going to go back and tear these outside pieces away as well. There we go. And then right here also. And then we're going to take a seam ripper or something with a small point, and we want to get just underneath that paper. And that came off really super easy. Now I'm going to take a few minutes right now and pull these little scraps of paper off. If you had a little pair of tweezers you could use for that, that would be good. Or you could even use the edge of your nail to kind of pull them away. Now, if you don't use a small seam, what will happen is pulling on that paper to get it off is going to pull at your seams enough that it may cause you problems. All right, let's get rid of this trash so we have a nice clean workspace. And then I'm going to cut this just about, well, it's going to be less than 1/4 of an inch because we've got an awful lot of curves. So we're going to come in here really close to that seam and cut it. Now, this is my first time in attempting one with this much detail. And if you want to do something a little more simple as far as your pattern for the bat, you just need to do what's most comfortable for you. This block of the month is really intended to be something that reflects your creativity. I'm just providing a guideline here and some ideas that you may want to use and some techniques. And we're cutting this really close. It's probably 1/8 of an inch away. I want to try to avoid clipping if we can. Don't know that that's going to be possible, but we're going to try. And then up here at the bat's head, that's probably where we're going to have the most problems. Right now I'm just going to cut straight across and we'll come back to that. We're almost there. Okay, now we're going to clip the points of all these off. Do not clip your threads. You'll be starting over if you do that. Okay, and then we're going to come back in here at the point of the head to the bat wing, and we're going to clip those 2 corners. And then we need to clip this up here as well. Some careful clipping there. Okay, then on the back side of this, we need to cut just a little slit, and we need to cut it into the white fabric, but not into the black. So we're looking to pull those 2 pieces apart. And then we're just going to cut a little slit. It's probably about 1 inch, a little bit longer here. Now let's get rid of all this so we have no distractions. Now what we want to do is we want to turn this. Now, if you use something super pointy when you're turning these, you'll get a great point, but you're going to come through that seam. So we need something that's a little more soft and rounded on the outside. A little small paintbrush works really well. A pencil with a kind of a rounded tip works well. And we're just going to slowly turn this bat. Got a lot of pointy edges, and this is kind of a long, skinny object, so it does tend to be a little more difficult. But there's one side through. And you could make this bigger. We just want to make sure we're only cutting that white fabric. That's the backing or the lining. Okay. And now we go to the poking part of this, where we're just going to keep turning that. Now we've got the head there. We have to deal with the head. That's going to be a little more difficult because they're very small areas. And remember, while this pattern has a lot of detail, you probably don't need all of that detail for someone to be able to know it's a bat. Okay, we've got the little head up. We don't have the little ears or wings or whatever you want to call that, but we're going to come back to that. We're just going to slide that pencil along the edge here to get that rounded shape on the top. That's what we're looking for. And then we're going to use the point to poke along the edges. Nice sharp point there. Nice point coming out there. We should have a couple more. Looking good. Look at there. I'm showing you the back side here because we've got a better contrast. Now I'm just going to continue this all around and take a break while I work on this. And when we come back, you'll see this completely turned and pressed, and you'll have a really great idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, we're back. And if you can master that, you've got this whole block easy peasy. So here's our bat. Now, you'll notice I did get all of the points. This one I'd like to stick out just a little bit more. And we can always work on that a bit and repress it if we need to. And just get it just as perfect as we want it to be. But I think anybody can tell that's a bat. And let me put it on this white piece of fabric so you can really see the bat shape. Okay, let's set that aside and talk about our pumpkin. Now, at first I was thinking we were going to do just an applique pumpkin out of one material and it would be super quick. And then I got to thinking about where I had seen pumpkins, and a lot of pumpkins now are done in the style that is used in Vintage Farm Girl. And that's this look right here. This look right here. And it's kind of a scrappy orange design, and it's constructed of a bunch of square blocks that are sewn together, and then the corners of that rectangle have little squares that are sewed in to snowball it, if you've heard that term before. So it kind of makes them round, but it's still a kind of a chunky design, and I thought about doing that. And I got to thinking that maybe we wanted something that was kind of sort of like that, but not quite like that. So what I did was I took 7 stripes of 2-inch fabric in orange colors that I liked, and I sewed them together. This is the back side. I sewed them together and pressed them down. And then I trimmed this block, and let me give you the exact measurements. This is going to be a rectangle that's about 9 inches by 11 inches. And I folded it in half this way and then in half this way, and gently cut a curve at all of the corners. And then here, where all of these fold up, which would be the top and the bottom, I cut just a little bit off to make a little indentation. Similar to the way if you were cutting a heart, you would cut in here, go around, and then cut down. In this case, we've just cut this way, cut that corner off, and then come down even. So we have now this pumpkin shape. It's got just this soft indentation here and soft indentation here. And I backed that with a piece of white fabric, just like we did the bat. And then I trimmed this. Now this one I trimmed down to about 1/4 inch, and I put a lot of clips and notches that I took out to allow it to turn. The other thing that I did was I took a little scrap of a brown fabric And it was probably, what would we say it was, 1 inch by 2 inches. And I folded 3 sides in, so I have this little stem with a raw edge on the bottom. And I tucked that up here at the top where this little thing comes in. So when I fold it, it's going to fold out. And then I cut the slit. And we're going to make the slit a little bit bigger, just so it's a little easier, it goes a little faster. Okay. So then we're going to turn this. It's the same technique we used on the bat, only this one's going to be a lot easier because it's bigger and easier to manipulate the way we want. And some of this turning and pressing out those corners and curves you can do with your fingers, just simply because of the size. We're going to do that first. Okay. So we need to press this, but I think you can see that we have that pumpkin shape. Just using our kind of rounded pencil there to press it out a bit. Okay, so what we have here, if we'll look into the overhead cam, is we have this pumpkin shape. It's a little flatter, like a pumpkin that's a little squishy, a little more horizontal, versus the tall jack-o'-lantern. So it's a little more fall-y looking, if you ask me, a little less Halloween. So, pardon me. We've got this general pumpkin shape, and the way I was able to place that stem in there, now we have a stem as well. So we will just sew that down. I kind of sewed it on the slant of it, and it's not going to sit exactly straight, but that will allow me to give it a little bit of a fold in it, and it'll look a little bit more like a stem. So we have that shape. I'm going to go press this real quick, and we'll be right back. Put our pumpkin together and our bat. Let's take another look at that little string there. There's our bat, and we have our pumpkin. Now, if you chose to do your pumpkin more upright, perfectly acceptable. If you wanted to do it out of 1 fabric, if you wanted to do it out of 12 fabrics, it's totally your choice. You could even choose to do the jack-o'-lantern style by putting the little triangles and mouth on your pumpkin. That's great. Now, up in my stem, let's talk about that just a minute. I put a little fold right there so that now my stem kind of comes up the way a stem would, and I can stitch that in place when I go to use an applique stitch on it. And then I have my bat, and I can do a couple of things. When I initially was thinking about this, this was the placement I was thinking about. The bat, the pumpkin, and I don't think I have them straight. I really like that. But then when I laid the bat on the fabric like this, I really like that too. So you've got a couple of different choices about what you want to do. And this is your project. This is a capturing of different ideas and thoughts for the whole year. So it's your choice what you do. I think for me, I'm going to go with my first impression. Now we want to make sure that we've got that 1/2 inch along the outside. So we'll come here, and the other thing I want to do is make sure that that seam that we have there is even all the way down. So we're going to put our ruler there at the edge and our 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're just going to make sure that that's pretty much even. I'm going to check a couple of seams, and that That's it. You don't want the pumpkin on there kind of wonky. And then we have our bat. So cute. We don't need to worry about the top and the bottom, but we've got 1/2 inch. Now, I might decide to take this bat pattern and make one that's just a little bit smaller and put it up here. I think that would be cute too. But for now, this is going to be what our design, or what my design is going to be. And I'm going to put a couple of dots of applique glue just to hold things in place. Let's get this pumpkin positioned first. Now, most of the techniques we've used today, we've used before on the show. We've used some of these in these block of the months and some for other projects. And the applique glue is just to hold it in place while we stitch. Okay. Oh, that looks so cute, doesn't it? And then we want to put this bat, and I want the bat's head to be right on that seam. Now, let me share a couple of thoughts and suggestions with you. When I first had this idea, I really thought that this bat was going to be either very difficult or very time-consuming, or it wouldn't come out anywhere the way I liked. But it was much easier than I thought it was. If I decide to make a smaller one, I know that by making a smaller one, it's going to be a little more difficult because it's smaller, it's tiny, and it's going to be difficult to get something in there to turn them appropriately. I think I'm going to put a pin here in some of these places just till that glue dries. But I did have concerns about that. And we've run the camera continuously through this, and it really has not taken that long. We did cut a little bit out for ironing the pieces and tidying up a little bit as we were working on this, but not something that was unusually long or something that would be misleading as far as how long this takes. Probably just 5 or 10 minutes each time we cut. It's enough to get our iron hot and get it pressed and back over. Okay, so we've got that. Let's put like 1 or 2 pins here. Now, a couple of other things you can do is you could use a little white thread. You could use just a plain white thread or a little white embroidery thread and put 2 little eyes for the bat. If you wanted the bat looking at you, if you didn't think that would creep you out, that might be cute. And you know, we can see what that would look like by just sticking a pin here where the bat's eyes might be, in case you were interested in doing that. There would be the bat looking at you. Or you could leave them out, your choice. Then, leaves and vines. I cut out 2 leaves. This is just something that I, excuse me. This is just a shape that I used in another project, and it kind of looks like a leaf. It doesn't look like a pumpkin leaf, and if you wanted something true to the pumpkin shape, you'll have to go out and see if you can find a shape for a pumpkin leaf. But these could be leaves that you added in to this design. Like this, maybe. Or you could put a little tendril down to be the vine growing around it. However you liked it. I think I like this one the best. It's kind of got that scrappy look. So you've got that leaf there. Now, to me, that looks a little bit big, so I might make it a little bit smaller, but you, depending on the size of your pumpkin, you can judge how you wanted that. I think for now I'll just leave it off and get this done. When you go to stitch it on, what I will do is I will use probably a yellow or a buff color thread to sew this along, and I'll use a little invisible stitch, and my goal will be to stitch it so that the top layer of fabric, the colored fabric, is pulled over just a little bit so you don't see the lining. That lining is there so we can turn it and have a finished seam. And I'll do the same with the black so that the black shows but the white lining underneath does not. If you're not a fan of hand stitching or doing the applique stitch, you could also put this on your machine and either do a little single straight stitch around the pieces that you've added, or you can do a zigzag satin stitch along the outside of it all. You could glue it. This is not going to be a permanent glue, so you would need to use a permanent glue, and I don't know how well that's going to hold up to washing. Usually with mine, I just stitch them down, and then it can go in the washer and you don't have to worry about it. But that is going to be our October block of the month. We're celebrating the fall, we're celebrating Halloween, and we're having some fun. And I hope you did too. This is a pretty quick project that you should be able to get done in a day without any problem. And it is a 15 by 15 inch block. Let me just double check that. So it's going to fit along with your other blocks for a quilt if you choose to put them all together in a quilt, or you could use them as a pillow cover like we've done with several of our blocks. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, share our video with a friend that might need a quick Halloween project, and we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. I'm going to go get some Halloween candy. See you next time.